Okay, so this one is about the nature of aberration. Aberration, meaning to stray from the typical path. And this word is very similar to deviant. A deviant is someone that strays from the typical path as well. That both these words are derived from the meaning of to wander away. And so in biology, an aberration is when something becomes an aberration, it simply means that it forks off and goes away in another direction. And this, even in a scenario where let's say there's something biological, and through the process of mitosis it splits and completely clones itself with an identical cell. Eventually, because of the nature of the environment those two cells go into, their path will be different. They'll go on a different path from each other. And so their biology, it will change inevitably over time. They'll be different. So originally they were identical, they were clones of each other. But because their environment changes, different genes within their DNA are activated in response to the perception of their environment. I've spoken about this many times, about the lens of your perspective is the judgment that you're making on the environment that you're within is determining which genes get switched on and off. So you have this incredible mechanism within you, and truly your wealth is your DNA. Your wealth is, if there is a holy grail, then it is your DNA. And that's probably not going to make any sense to you right now, but my hope is that at the end of this audio, you'll come to understand that your DNA is your greatest gift, and the fact that you are an aberration is where your greatest potential lies. So what does this mean? So let's say, you're a biological system. You are the byproduct of, who knows, eons of time and of evolution. You began as a hydrogen atom, or possibly, more likely a photon of light, or plasma within the center of a sun. And you've evolved, you've adapted, you've bred over and over again. All the cells in your body have split trillions upon trillions upon trillions of times. You've self-pollinated. And your body is, evolutionarily speaking, is an aberration. There's no one that looks exactly like you. There's no one that thinks exactly like you. There's no one that has your perspective. There's no one that walks the exact same way as you. You are absolutely an aberration. You have strayed from the typical path over and over and over again to carve out your own unique path, which means your perspective is unique because the path you've walked is different from anyone else's who's ever existed. And if your path is different, that means different genes within your DNA have been activated, turned on and off. And so when you have children, they inherit your DNA from the state that it's in the moment you conceive. And that this is a miracle. It's an absolute miracle that nature is this intelligent and autonomous and wealth generating and perpetual. So many scientists that they're saying perpetual energy is impossible, that it doesn't exist, it's not real. I mean, what do you think you're living in? This is a perpetual, self-regulating, autonomous system. The entire thing. To say that perpetual energy doesn't exist and is impossible is just, I just don't understand how you can even begin to say that. Once you understand the nature of life itself, you see it everywhere. Every cell is a self-regulating perpetual system. Every form of life is capable of wealth generation in context of its symbiotic relationship to everything else in its environment. This is the nature of life. That everything is sovereign with distributed authority. Everything has its own authority and is sovereign. Its power resides within its body, yet it is interdependent with so many different things. And none of those things are trying to support the other forms of life. The sun's not making an effort to take care of all of the life that exists. It's just radiating. It's just being a sun. Everything in nature is symbiotic, but not consciously. Everything's just being what it is. It's being its aberrant self. And this is what I really want to hone in on, is that human beings are we're so messed up because we're a species that's trying to be the same as each other. Everything else in nature is seeking to express its uniqueness into its environment. There's nothing else in nature trying to be the same as something else. And in truth, nothing in nature evolves to be identical to anything else. Even a cell that splits through mitosis and is virtually a carbon copy of the cell that it came from will be different very, very quickly because of the nature of the environment that contains it and the perception of its environment. Is this thing I'm bumping into a threat? Is it helping or hindering? Is it an obstacle I have to transcend? Is it a source of nourishment? Is it a predator? What is it? And, it's glaringly obvious that the mechanism for evolution is judgment. It is judgment. Simultaneously, the most potent force in existence, judgment. And the greatest and deepest fear of every human being, the fear of judgment. Why? Because if we're honest with ourselves, if someone can see who we really are, they would see that we are an aberration, that we're totally aberrant. They'd see that we are so different from them. That it's so glaringly obvious that you feel stupid for even trying to hide it. How could you possibly be the same as everyone else when the path you've walked and that your DNA has been on, that your parents, their parents, their parents, and on and on and on and on and on and on, and on, all inheriting the DNA from their ancestors who had their unique path, and et cetera, et cetera. Your uniqueness is so obvious. And it's your holy grail. The evolution of your DNA. The unique combination of codes. The unique splicing together of two sets of DNA to create a chimera that is you. You're a hybrid made out of hybrids. You're a chimera. I mean, think about the journey of one cell took way back when. At some point, there was a single cell that became a multiple cell organism that then consolidated itself and gained its own consciousness. And then that split. And then it consolidated itself, and then that thing gained its own consciousness. That's what you are. The uniqueness is impossible to describe, really. No one could come close to being the same as you, thinking the same as you. Behaving the same way as you. And here we have a world where everyone is seeking the attention of others to fill the void, the massive, massive void that has to be filled in, because no one is capable of appreciating our genius, our gifts. That gift is our uniqueness. It's the unique path gained from being who you are. It's the wisdom contained within your DNA that came from through the lens of the perspective of all of your ancestors, all of them. Just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. That's your uniqueness. And so you are an aberration. Everyone is an aberration. But we try our hardest to try and hide it from everyone else. And, the real terror that kicks in is the fear of judgment we have around someone figuring it out, seeing that we are, how different we are. We struggle to admit it to ourselves. The reality of how different we are from everyone else. Because it makes us feel alone. It makes us feel like no one else understands. And yet it has the potential to bond us. All we need to do is collectively flip a switch that enables the perspective of all of us to change. All of a sudden, the thing that we appreciate about each other is our uniqueness. That we're not trying to fit in anymore. We're actually trying to help each other to be different, because we realize that that's what thriving means. That if we can embrace our uniqueness and the aspects of our nature that make us aberrant, then all of a sudden we can meet the unmet needs of every form of life because of our differences. In the same way, a panda can only eat one particular strand of bamboo. One specific kind of bamboo. The uniqueness of that bamboo is enabling the panda to live. If that bamboo was trying to be like all the other bamboo, the panda would die. Everything in nature has evolved to meet the unmet need of some other form of life. And the uniqueness of who you are is your DNA. You're a unique expression of a blueprint. And that your DNA is that blueprint. The environment that everyone that's had your DNA, everyone you've inherited it from, has informed the nature of the DNA to come in future. Which genes are switched on and off. And so if you think of your immutable DNA code within you, if all of it was switched on, imagine all the junk DNA. We when we think about DNA, we think about 2 strands of DNA. Well, science is beginning to show us that there's actually 12 strands. And in fact, there's evidence to show us that there are 24 strands, 12 double helixes. One of them's activated, in a specific unique code. All the rest of that DNA is just junk DNA? I don't think so. There's just no way. Nothing in nature exists for no reason. Everything has evolved to meet the unmet need of some other form of life, to enable greater potential to be realized. And in truth, that's what DNA is. DNA is a blueprint, and it exists as the latent potential within you to become something different than what you are right now. You're designed to perpetually adapt and evolve in order to transcend your environment and to become more, to unlock greater and greater potential within your DNA, to turn on different sequences of code that make you look different, behave different. Make you more efficient, enable you to do things that you probably never could have imagined. Now imagine that, a double helix of DNA, and now imagine it's one of 12 double helixes. Now what would it take to activate another double helix within your DNA? What would it take to activate all 12? Because all of those pairs represent the total potential of a human being. And I have my own theories on what all the other strands are. And my belief is that we hold within our DNA the potential to populate most of the planets in the solar system. And, I believe that if we, in the same way that, the theory of how human beings evolved from single cell organisms that emerged out of the water and adapted to land, I envisage some kind of pool of water on the surface of one of the planets in the solar system, and a single cell organism containing the DNA of a human being in that water, possibly fused with a hydra, a truly eternal and invincible organism that exists today, that's virtually indestructible. this is truly the potential that we have, and my belief is that radical environmental changes will be what triggers our junk DNA to be switched on and activated in new and different ways that we never could have imagined. Now, it'd be cool if we could just switch it on at will. It's not by design. It's not by design. If we could realize our full potential in a moment, we would stagnate at moments after. What's the point of realizing the fullness of your potential in this moment if there's nothing beyond that? What's the point of life otherwise? And so we have to fall in love with nature. We have to lean into the way that nature's been designed. The intelligence behind it is as close to perfection as I could ever imagine. The way that it works, the dualistic nature of it, the paradoxical nature of it, the fact that you can look at it through so many different lenses of perspective. You can look at it at an atomic level. You can see it from the perspective of the atom, both radiant and magnetic at the same time. You can see it from the perspective of the molecule, bonded to other atoms, perpetually seeking stability, whilst the consciousness that contains every form of life is perpetually seeking to make progress at any cost. And then the symbiotic nature of those two things, one of them seeking stability, perpetually seeking stability, the other one seeking to weaken the stable bonds in order to establish new, more advanced bonds. And so within us, there's this constant battle, there's this constant conflict of the part of us that wants to create a bond and stay where we are. We want to become stable and secure and safe, and we want to stay there. Meanwhile, our consciousness is going, nah, let's go. We've got to go populate Neptune. What are you doing? What are you planting your roots for? No. And the nature of your mind is that it'll just pepper you with thoughts going, what about this? What about this? Let's do this. What about this? What are you doing? You know, we have to fall in love with the structure. We have to embrace it and lean into it and say, I'm a hybrid. I'm a mind, and I'm a mind. I'm made of atoms, and I'm also biology. So in the same way, from the perspective of the atom, where you can see the perspective of the atom forming bonds with other atoms, collaborating with other elementary components or constituent parts to form a molecule. You know, I'm a hydrogen atom, and I'm bonded to two oxygen atoms, and I'm stable, and I'm water. Oh, yeah. Wow. I'm both hydrogen and I'm water. So what else can I become? Or shall I just stay here where it's comfortable? What else can that water become? And so now you can see the perspective of the molecule. You can see that the water now has a perspective. And it understands itself to be a hydrogen atom and two oxygen atoms. And then you can see the perspective of the organism. It has consciousness. It has DNA. It's made up of trillions of atoms in different combinations. It's capable of self-pollination, mitosis, and judgment. And then from the perspective of that cell, we can zoom out and see the perspective of the being that cell is a part of, the greater being. Maybe that cell is part of a liver. And so we see the perspective of the liver. Then we zoom out, we see the perspective of the body containing the liver. Then we zoom out and we see the perspective of the family containing that body. Then we zoom out and we see the perspective of the community containing lots of different families. Then the region. Then the nation. Then the planet, Earth. Then zoom out again. See all the other planets in the solar system. Zoom out again. See all the solar systems in the galaxy. Zoom out again. See all the galaxies in the universe. Zoom out again. See all the universes in the multiverse. You can look at it from every perspective. And the higher up you go into the macro stuff, the less true something is at an atomic level. But once you complete that loop, you realize that they're all the same. So the lens of perspective is so different from for every form of life. And lots of them render the other ones untrue. But the truth of the perspective of that form of life is still valid, even though it's invalidating the perspective of something else. From the perspective from our perspective as human beings, we feel like we're one thing. I'm aware of being one human being. I don't consider myself an ecosystem of trillions of beings. But I am. But that's not my perspective. And so it's pointless trying to fight it, trying to, I would say lots of people try and bend it to their will. They use that terminology, bending our environment to our will, commanding nature. And I think to myself, well, understand how it works and then work with it. Rather than trying to fight it, rather than trying to break the laws that are immutable. Understand those immutable laws and then work with them in order to reveal greater and greater potential of who and what you can become, without wishing for all of that potential to be fulfilled instantaneously. There's absolutely no point in that. Because one thing I'll share with you, and I hope this stays with you forever, is that there is, when you're creating things, if you're baking a cake, you begin with the end in mind. You don't begin baking a cake and consider it a never-ending process. You create it with the ending in mind. And The ending being, at the end of it, there's a cake on your bench in your kitchen. It's fully iced, still slightly warm, and it smells delicious, and it tastes incredible. And so the end is you having a taste of it, slicing a piece off and having a taste. That's the end. And one thing that is for certain is that the intelligence that created you began with the ending in mind as well. And that means that the intelligence that created this entire system, this universe, it also created with the end in mind. And that end, from my perspective, is every strand of your DNA, all of your junk DNA, fully activated. And all of the latent potential of your DNA not only recognized, but realized. And what do you think happens when a being becomes fully self-realized? If you realize, not recognize, but if you realize the full potential of who and what you are, there is nothing after that. There's nothing for you to come to know, to understand, to experience. And that is the end. That is the end. But rather than leave it there, there is a cherry on top. Because a long time before that happens, there will be a new blueprint created, a new DNA blueprint template created that will hold even greater potential. And this is the beauty of the imagination, that there is truly no limit. But in order for something to fully realize itself, whether it's the cake that you're baking, whether it's the business that you've been building your entire life, whether it's your retirement from that business, there has to be an ending in mind. There has to be an ending in mind, but what I can promise you is that no matter what that ending entails, it is always a transition into a brand new beginning of realizing even greater potential of who and what you can become and create and experience. Always. So even when we see that ending and we think it's the end, it never, ever, ever is the end. So your aberrant nature is your DNA. It's the uniqueness of how it's been switched on, how you've evolved, the lens of your perspective. And if you truly want to thrive, the key to that is having the courage to recognize that uniqueness and then realize it by sharing it and expressing it into the environment that you're a part of. And if you can find it within yourself to recognize that potential within you, and you decide to share it relentlessly, no matter how scary it may feel, no matter how deep your fear of being judged is, and it will be intense. It will be really intense. You'll come to know and you'll come to realize that the fear that you had about being judged was actually your deepest desire. because judgment truly is about justice. When you think about a judge in a court, the purpose of that judge is to bring justice. Now, the only way, let's say you've been working your entire life, slogging away, slogging your guts out, and you've been afraid of being judged your entire life, so you never put yourself in a scenario where you will be judged. You are preventing yourself from receiving judgment. Notice I'm using the word receiving. Justice means just rewards. But we pair justice with something being taken away. Not realizing how much energy and devotion and sacrifice we've actually put in to the environment around us our entire lives. But if you are resistant to justice, if you're resistant to being judged, then you're resisting the justice that you deserve. Remember, your nature doesn't it doesn't see separation. It doesn't. If you're resistant to an aspect of nature, whether it's the shadow nature or the light nature of it, the positive nature, you're resisting it entirely. If you resist the darkness, you're resisting the light. So if you're resistant to judgment, then you're rejecting, you're limiting your potential to receive judgment in your favor. And so what I'll leave you with is that if you're walking around in the world in fear that the rug's going to be pulled out from under your feet all the time, understand that this comes from a fear of judgment and a belief that somehow the universe is punishing you, or God's punishing you, and you're waiting to be punished because you're naughty. Don't want to be judged. And the likely reality is that it is your deepest desire to be judged and to receive the judgment that everyone deserves. Because this entire world is abundant. It's a wealth-generating perpetual system. All of the progress in this system comes from a surplus elsewhere. All of it. Nothing is made from a deficit. It's all comes from wealth. It all comes from a surplus. And in this system right now, I can tell you, there is surplus wealth just clogging up the entire planet. Our inability to refuse depreciating matter into something else that can appreciate, be utilized to meet an unmet need elsewhere. It's immense. It's utterly immense. But until we, sort these things out, we're living in with this fear of being judged. Trying to conserve everything, trying to, be seen to be caring for the environment, when the reality is that this entire system's been set up and designed and constructed in a way that enables us to consume anything that we need and to be able to refuse it into something if we don't need it anymore, so that it can go down into the earth and back up through the earth's crust into some other form of life. This whole thing, No form of life is incapable of generating wealth in context of the environment that contains it. And our environment is completely and utterly and totally abundant. But we haven't tapped into the hidden surplus yet. And your aberrance, your uniqueness, holds the key. Your uniqueness holds the key. Until your uniqueness is revealed, until you understand the need that your nature has evolved and adapted to be able to meet, until you understand that, you're never going to be able to meet that need. And this is where wealth comes from. This is where thriving comes from. The interdependency and diversity of all of the forms of life expressing their uniqueness into the system, so that the panda can access that rare strain of bamboo. You are a rare strain of bamboo. You have to find the panda that needs you in order to thrive. And I promise you, there's something about you that's unique and is a potential source of wealth for you and for someone else. So, okay, that one meandered a lot, but nonetheless, it came full circle as usual. I'll leave it there. That's it for now for the nature of aberration. Cheers for now.